Should we get into the Vox Machina finale?
Yes, we
I
shall.
knew he wasn't dead. I never wavered for a fucking second.
I want you to know they changed that not a huge amount, but like
Was he
they
dead for a lot longer?
no, they dragged it out in this. In the show, it was not dragged out like this.
Oh,
Also,
really?
was tweaked a little bit for. So, okay, before I get into what, because I will say I've tried my best to, although I've watched the live game, obviously it's very hard to not be biased to the original media. Often
Of
like
course.
book readers to films. I want your opinion before
Okay.
I open up the world of like comparing to what actually went down in the
Yeah.
show and stuff. This season, and just in general, these first 3 seasons up to
Mm-hmm.
this end point, that was very clearly a we're all gonna go our separate ways for a little bit. To you, did it feel like Scanlan's character arc made sense? To where he went through all this stuff and then he kind of got he's ended at like the happy ending sort of thing, going off with his daughter.
So, I would say it makes sense. I would say it was too fast, though. Logically, I see how we got where we got. He
Mm-hmm.
was a womanizer. He did whatever he wanted. He then, because he moved around so much, he never had to deal with the repercussions of being a womanizer.
Mm-hmm.
The second he was confronted with that, that was a big moment for him, and he was like, "Oh shit!" He reevaluated his life. He decided he wanted to be part of his daughter's life, and then you get some hijinks there. But it felt very much like they wanted to tell that story this season, but it's a much less compelling story when compared to Percy's dead and the relationships of Keyleth and such and all of this. So it became a B and sometimes C plot and also never got its own episode at any point. Like
Mm.
I genuinely thought when whichever episode it was when he goes off and they come back and they get attacked by the dragons,
Mm-hmm.
I assumed the next episode was going to be what Scanlan was doing while he was away.
Mm.
And we didn't get that. So I would say the story makes sense,
Right.
but
Yeah,
a bit of exposition would have been better.
yeah. Okay, so that's the live game fans. I would say there are plenty that are. This is a different like aren't pissed. There is a lot of live game fans that were a bit upset with this season and how this season ended.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
Get
recall
wrecked,
your
nerds.
mind back to I mentioned earlier in the season, I was like, oh, they're setting something up for Scanlan.
Yeah.
They didn't pay it out. And like,
Oh,
don't
okay.
don't get me wrong. So there's it's tough because obviously in my eyes, I'm like, oh, I have this thing that's come in, and it was such a huge pivotal moment. And I don't think they're really gonna touch it the way they did, so I don't think it really classes as a spoiler now.
Is it kind of too far gone for them to really do it even remotely in
I
the same
think
way?
yeah, I don't think they do it in the same way. I think they maybe touch on similar notes, but
Got you.
essentially, we got the episode that all ended got kind of a similar, almost the same conclusion. Was called Bard's Lament. This was more of a Bard's Melody. Like he got
Got
the
you.
happy ending in the live game. It wasn't a happy ending.
Oh, he didn't get to reconcile with his daughter.
So he the the thing I think a lot of the fans need to, the ones that are annoyed, need to remember in the live game, Ashley Johnson, who played Pike, wasn't there all the time because she was off working. Often her character would be written off somewhere, or she would be there and the group would just run her. But obviously, you're not going to get the same RP interactions through that.
Yes.
And also, through a lot of the live games, Scanlan's character was kind of treated as like the womanizer, the joke, the sleazy one. They pulled pranks on him a lot. Wasn't very well, not in a nasty way, but like the group didn't take him seriously.
Got
And
ya.
it all built up when he found out about his daughter and stuff. And the same thing happened. He became unconscious. And while he was unconscious, they pranked him, covering him in chocolate pudding,
Okay.
his lifeless body. And then Pike thought, oh, he's not waking up. What if we go get his daughter? Brought his daughter. But Scanlan had a different reaction to that, which was he flipped out at the group.
Oh, okay.
Like, he was pissed. And it was a very intense emotional moment in the live game. And Scanlan essentially was like, I can't believe you would bring her, because he saw it as he'd promised to his daughter, I'm not going to die. And they've brought her, and his character's point of view was, you've just shown her my lifeless body, which means I broke my promise to her. None of you care about me. And then there's like, the iconic line is, like, and this is an intense moment they're RPing, and he goes, you guys don't know anything about me. What's my mother's name? And none of them actually know. And they're all sat there silently. It's like, what about my dad? Is he even alive? And it's like, essentially, it's he's upset and he leaves. In a very intense way of like, none of you actually care about me. I don't want to be here anymore. Which obviously, for this show, I don't think made sense.
No, and they can have, in my opinion, with where we currently are, I think they can rework that in a better way.
Potentially.
I think, especially now that they know people aren't happy that it was missed.
So
I think they can make it so he's reconciling with his daughter, and they get kind of pissy with him for
not
putting them on the back burner. And then he's like, fuck you guys. You know nothing about me. I'm trying to you and Percy get to be together. You and Keeler for doing your thing. None of you give a fuck about my life. I'm trying to have a relationship with my daughter. And I think that would be a more powerful kind of way to tell that.
They're like, obviously a lot of fans were waiting for this moment, and me included. I was like, oh, this is like, timeline wise, I was like, this is coming. I kind of overlooked that it wasn't being set up the same, like story beat wise, and I think I would have still enjoyed it if they'd done it. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think the story arc they'd put Scanlan on this in the animated series was different, and it would have not made as much sense for him to blow up at the group like he did when you've had Pike being supportive and them, like, him having that support system there a bit to go and try and reconcile with his daughter. And he hasn't been made the joke or pranked as much. Like, it wouldn't have made sense. While I think what they did in the live game was a very intense story, and actually, in my eyes, was a bit of a better story arc for him, I don't think it would have made sense for this. But it also kind of, I think, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the season. I really enjoyed the animated show. I felt like this season, this has been backed up because Sam's done an interview. The season was very much we don't know if we're getting a fourth season. We're going to cram this in and try and end it in a way that's fine. And personally, I think they're stupid for not thinking they weren't going to get a fourth season.
There is, and like this absolutely, like, I know it's on Amazon, but this kind of comes back to us going, fuck Netflix for constantly cancelling stuff after one season, even if it does really well. There is the mindset of writers now is so pessimistic about whether they're going to get renewed that they either feel a need to not accomplish anything in a season so that fans are like, oh, well, we need to know what happens to put a bit of pressure on, or they feel a need to cram an ending in, like a definitive ending, so that if they don't get another one, they can go, well, you can just imagine what happens because this is like a natural point. And as a result, you don't get them willing to be a bit more flexible because they're nervous. Because imagine if they'd have written it the way maybe it needed to be written, and then it doesn't get a fourth season for whatever reason, then everyone's like, well, where was that going?
I get that. My
It's
opinion.
like the old Toy Story.
Here's my thing. They are. Critical Role knows their fandom is strong. They know their fandom's loving this animated show. Like, it's going to get the viewership from them alone. If they've made a deal where it's more than, like, Amazon has more ownership than just distribution, they're kind of stupid for that. Because if it's me, you write the story that is the best story, and if that means it's going to end on a bit of a cliffhanger, and then Amazon goes, we're not renewing, you go, okay, either Critical Role could make this themselves and could distribute. They've started their own streaming thing, a bit like Dropout, for their own content. Like, they could do the fourth season elsewhere. Like, they could figure it out or go somewhere else and sell it. And I think they were a bit naive to think they weren't going to get one, which has meant, and Sam said they didn't want to end it in a way that felt unresolved, so they crammed a lot in. But I actually think it made for a worse season because you lost a lot of things. Like, you lost the. I don't think this season felt like a adventuring group, like with a family-esque dynamic. It was constant duos going off and doing things.
Yeah.
It was very split because they were trying to cover so many storylines, which then lost, in my opinion, lost a lot of things. The whole Percy arc, I didn't hate that they dragged it out a bit more and made it more like intense with it Ripley.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't like was it should have been everyone was there to kill Ripley, which Vax's character says everyone should have been here. Yes, they fucking should have been. In the live show, like, Percy going down in the fight in the live game and then them having to finish the fight was so intense, knowing that Percy was like dead,
doing death saving rolls and then dying and shit.
Yeah, to which is what led to Vex got the killing blow and got the how do you want to do this, and she says I want an arrow through the heart, and as she screams, an arrow through her mouth into her throat. And like, that is an intense moment. I think it would have been much cooler in the animated show if, rather than splitting it up, had been they walk in, see Percy's dead body, then fight Ripley in that like intense, and do what essentially they did on the boat, but do that straight away. You could have still dragged.
They could have still dragged out the bringing Percy back.
Yeah, they collect his body and his gun and everything, and like the gun could have just been in somewhere, and then Vax hears from the gun and he's like, hang on guys, I think he's, and figures it out still later, because they immediately went off and had to do something else. Also, the Fodak fight was cool. And the Raishan fight was cool. I think the Raishan fight was severely lacking though. Like, in the live game, that was the hardest fight they ever fought, and they all almost nearly died. Yet in this, Keyleth 1v1 Raishan.
Yeah. The only thing I will say, compared to maybe previous seasons, and I'm saying this as someone who now understands D&D more than I did while watching the first two seasons, the fight scenes felt less inspired by what happened in the session, and more like they were, right, this is a fight, we're just going to animate a fight.
Yeah, and I think that came from them trying to cram a lot of stories into this. Like, they wanted to get Keyleth further along in her Aramonte. They needed the relationship going on. They knew they were going to have to deal with Percy and Scanlan dying, essentially. And all the chromacon. Like, they had a lot to fit in one season, which then meant they fights kind of, because they were split groups, they kind of less were D&D inspired. Like, I think the Raishan fight would have been so cool if it had been more D&D driven, and like lots of them were clearly like ropey, almost dying, and then Keyleth stepped up and was the one that like clutched up.
And I guess on like, because obviously we're not trying to bash them for the sake of it.
No. Like, I
and in
enjoyed
their
it.
defense as well, had they decided to essentially make this season 2 seasons so they could give everything the time it deserved, the passing of Thordak's voice actor, I'm forgetting his name.
You've made me blank now.
Yeah, I've absolutely blanked. Lance Reddick.
Lance, that's it.
Yeah, the passing of Lance Reddick would have made it so they had to change voice actor. They wouldn't have had a choice.
Yeah.
Which would have taken away in a different way. So it's one of these things, it's never perfect. I completely get why people who enjoyed the live show and the live show created this opportunity would be unhappy at things being changed. I get that. But on the flip side, what is the point of adapting something if you just recreate it word for word? With an adaptation, there is like this kind of nature of change something, otherwise what's the point? I can't remember who said it, but an artist said, if you're just going to make the same thing, what's the point of it being made?
I agree, and this isn't me back. Like, I'm very much, I did enjoy this. I don't think it's like, oh my god, they ruined it. This season was terrible. Like some of the fans have been. I was hoping they were going to set up the Scanlan stuff because I've seen that happen, and I'm like, oh yeah, I get to see it animated. Does it make sense for the story? No. If he'd just blown up at them, you would have been like, you would have been like, why is he just turned on them all?
Why Scanlan got so pissy?
Would I have liked them to have been setting that up? Yeah, of course. But like, I do think my issues and a lot of the issues that the fans are having, but like getting too stuck on, it's more so like they didn't know they were going to have a 4th season, and whether or not you agree that they should have believed that. And like, I personally think they should have known they were going to get a 4th season. Like, this has been great. They have such a strong fan base. Like, the chances of them not getting a 4th would have been wild. So they should have written it that way. But I get them trying to reach a point where they can, if this is the end, that was the end. Because also, like, the 1-year break came a good jump later. Also, which this doesn't change things or spoil things, but it's like the break was similar to how they set it up. The difference being Keela finished her Aramente, then on the break got to like deal with like what comes next for after completing it. And Percy and Vex were in Whitestone, and it was a good kind of, they had like a in-game character break and a break IRL. But I don't mind them pulling that forward. I just think there was a lot crammed into the season, which it's just the way it was.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily made the season terrible in how they've handled things. There's some just small things for me. It's like the Raishan fight, I felt lost a lot of weight. The Scanlan thing, I would have liked Bard's Lament, but it doesn't mean, like you said, and I'm sure they will try to do, bring some of those elements in next season.
Absolutely. And I think changing Scanlan blowing up over them caring to them, because before he blew up because he misconstrued a nice actor bringing his daughter, they can change it so that instead of him blowing up about that, they make it so that he gets angry at them going, right, Scanlan, we need your focus. And he's like, you guys have got your lives, let me have mine. And I think they can make that work in a more impactful way.
They've set up the next big bad. I know who it is. I'm not going to spoil it. Which is like, they've ended it in a way that like potential big bad in the future, if it ends here, whatever. I think the way they'll do it is that's going to start gathering momentum. They'll be like trying to get this group, the team back together, and it'll probably play it off as like Scanlan doesn't want to leave his daughter. He's finally like you say, he's finally getting to build a life. They've all had that. He's now getting that, and that's where I think they'll try and kind of blend it in.
I think that works really well for the story they've told in the show. There is only one thing that the show did that made me wince consistently.
Okay.
and I don't know if it's a thing in America or if it's just being English and growing up in the area I'd grown up, that it made me uncomfortable. Grog's nickname for Pike.
Oh,
Yeah. That's not really... I don't think that would be a thing that most Americans are aware of. But every time he said that with Grog being the lovable guy he is, a little bit of me winced.
do you
So I
mean
was
the
like,
buddy
oh,
thing?
no. Like, his extension of the name Pike.
Oh. So he only did it a couple of times, I think.
Yeah,
Most
but
of the
every
time
time
they
he did it, I was like...
Okay, yeah. No, most of the time, yeah, they would call themselves each other buddy because that's what they do
Yeah.
at the table. Him using the extension of Pike
Yeah.
definitely is a British thing, and I don't think they
I
realize.
don't think Americans know. So for anyone who's not in the UK, or even people in the UK don't understand, there is a term for people of Romani Gypsy descent, which is a horrible term that is used, which is that Grog used a few times as a nickname for Pike. And again, like I said, I don't think that would have really got across to the American. I think it is very much a British term.
Yeah, it is. I think
But every time I heard it,
UK,
I was just like, oh, it's one of them ones where you just see a cultural difference. I was like, oh, I don't like,
now
especially with Grog being like such a friendly, lovable character. I was like, that feels so weird.
Yeah, I remember when it first was said, and I was like, that's a different thing in the UK.
Yeah.
Also, though, in that moment, being like, I know it's because they're US, and I know they won't mean anything by it because they're not like that. But
I would like them to just stick to Buddy next season, for the love of God.
But then in my head, I'm like, I don't feel like they used that at the table really, from when I remember the live games. But obviously, I'd not
I
watched them
feel
for a long
like
time.
if they would have been using it at the table, someone in the chat at some point
Probably
would have informed them.
Yeah, I get that. I will say also staying on Grog, I feel like because they crammed a lot in with the different storylines, Grog kind of got sidelined to just
Grog
the
got
the
stiffed
joke.
this season.
Yeah,
Grog,
which was a
but
shame.
Grog had a really good second season.
He
Season
did.
2 was a lot of Grog
Yeah.
lines. But yeah, he was absolutely there as comic relief. Fortunately, Grog is one of the best comic relief characters ever written, so he excelled in that position.
In this like story, there's plenty of moments of comedy that happened at the table. I think, unfortunately for him, because they changed Scanlan's character a bit, he lost some of those moments there. Like his moment when Scanlan died is a lot more intense at the table. But obviously they didn't have that really this time because they did it differently. It's just things that, like you say, they're adapting it, and obviously when you adapt things, story does change a bit, and I'm not against that. My issue that this season is it just felt like they crammed a lot in because they were scared they weren't getting a season 4, which I get. I just think they should have known they were going to get a season 4.
My plea to Amazon and the studios for next season: give us 16 episodes instead of 12. And bring it down so it's not 3 episodes a week. I can make my peace with 2 a week. I would prefer a 2-episode premiere, a 2-episode closing, and then 1 episode a week in between.
Yeah, no,
treat it with the quality it deserves, because, and maybe this is just a me thing, the more episodes you throw out at a time, apart from an opening and a closing, it feels like you don't respect it. To put it in context, we're about to talk about Agatha and Penguin. Penguin started before Vox Machina, and we're going to still be talking about Penguin for another 3 weeks after this.
Yeah. No, I get you. I fully do.
Like forgetting even how much you respect the show and how much you spent on the show and all the hard work that's gone into the show, give yourself a chance for a podcast as world-renowned as our own to speak about you for more time.
Yeah. Do you know what I think? I kind of realized what I think it is. They've catered more to their live game audience because their live game audience was used to sitting down on a Thursday evening for 4 hours straight and watching the game once a week. So
yeah,
they're like, oh, well, if we just give them a 20-minute episode, they're going to feel like, what the fuck? That was like nothing. They've been too worried about that, I think, that conversion that they did the triple.
If they want to give more, go to 8 1-hour episodes. So we still get the same amount of time as if we're doing 16 20-minute episodes or 30-minute episodes.
Yeah.
And do that instead. If they want to give it like more substance
for season 4 is I like them to write the story in a in the way that is gonna not feel rushed. So if they have to write it like, look, this story's next bit of story is going to be 2 seasons. Get Amazon to greenlight that. I don't want them to end up in the same again now, where they write season 4 worried it's going to end at season 4 and they try to cram in a lot. Because I think, going off what I can remember, I'd say there's like 2 seasons worth of story left. Like, in a condensed enough but written well way. I hate for them to try and cram that into 1 season because they're scared of not getting season 5. Because then that just makes for a bad end, like a rushed end to what is
absolutely
a pretty cool arc. But these are also things they might learn from for 99, hopefully.
Yeah. And like, let's be honest, me and you are kind of the opinion that for most good shows, 5 or 6 seasons is the sweet spot. More than 6 seasons, you have to be a masterpiece of TV to still be worth watching after that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if they would have given season 3 the 2 seasons it probably needed, and then you say there's 2 more seasons worth of story, that would have put us at 6 seasons, which is probably the exact right amount of TV.
It's funny because now I'm thinking about it. There was so at the end of the campaign of campaign 1,
yeah,
there was a moment that happened that was purely by player choice, which then Matt was like, well, that's going to be a one-shot special at some point. And then down the line, they did a one-shot special. I'd love if they do 2 more seasons, and right at the end of like season 5, that moment happens, and we get a like movie level length animated thing
really cool.
of that one-shot thing. And
that'd be very cool.
That's how they kind of round out.
Give us a 90-minute one-shot special.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good way, and that's my hope. But like, and don't get that me bashing on things. It's not so much it's just
it's all been very constructive. You've not just been negative. You've been like, I would have rather they do it this way.
Because, and I think if there are any Critical Role live game fans that happen to listen to this who were pissed, I think you need to just kind of, we're lucky to even have this. This started off as a random live show on Twitch. Like, the fact that they've got so big that we got an Amazon funded animated show.
Who was sat there watching campaign 1 live as it came out ever expected this.
No, never. And it's like, I get why people were upset and were like, well, I didn't get the thing that I wanted. I just say, like, look at it try to step back and look at it as like how this story has been told and why it wouldn't make sense. Yes, there is some things they could have done better. Is it the end of the world? No. Is the show still great? Yes. Like, enjoy it for what it is.
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm looking forward to season 4 at least.
Absolutely.